It's Monday morning. Actually, it's Monday afternoon, and it's a beautiful day outside. The colors are very near their peak now, and the temperature is 70 degrees. We're supposed to have two really nice days before the next cold front comes through, and then the temperatures will drop 10 or 15 degrees. But it's an incredibly beautiful fall this year. And the weather has just been phenomenal. We haven't had a lot of rain in the last 10 or 12 days, so we're going to have to water the grass in the garden. Still have some tomatoes on my tomato plants because we haven't had any freezing weather yet. And just a gorgeous day. Ever heard the expression jumping Jehoshaphat? Well, you probably wondered where it came from. Actually, there is a character in the Bible in the Old Testament, the son of Asa, who was Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat was very much like his father. He did right in the sight of God, or in the sight of the Lord. You find him in 2 Chronicles chapter 15. First of all, you find out that he was faithful. He followed in his father's footsteps, unlike so many of the other kings that were back in the Old Testament. And while he was not a person of fighting, he had to do some fighting. There was a time when a great multitude, it tells us in the book, came against him. And he was human. You know, he was a good man and followed quite closely in his father's footsteps. Although he made a few bad alliances, he was human. And not only was he faithful, not only was he a fighter, but he had to fear. You'll find in 2 Chronicles 20, verses 3 and 4, that he had the human frailty of fear. However, when he became fearful, he did what we should all do. He turned to the Lord, and he declared a fast amongst the people, a time of prayer and fasting. And he showed his great faith. Now that's 4 F's: faithful, fighter, fear, and faith. You'll find that in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verses 5 and 6. You see, he had a confidence in the Lord. And then there's the foretelling. It's 5 F's. We find in verse 15 that the Lord says to him, "Do not fear, do not be dismayed because of the great multitude that are coming against you." Now they were really close. "Do not fear and do not be dismayed, for the battle is not yours, but it is God's." Isn't that good? When you're on the right side of God, when you're faithful and you're willing to fight, and you take your fears to the Lord, and you have great faith and confidence in God, God says to you in his still small voice, or sometimes in a loud booming voice, "Do not fear, do not be dismayed, for the battle is not yours, it is God's." And then there comes the funny part of the story. That's 6 F's. It's funny. And verse 21, the Lord had Jehoshaphat appoint singers. Now, these are not lancemen. These are not bowmen. These are not chariot fighters. These are singers. And they went ahead of the armies of Jehoshaphat, singing praises unto God. And the enemy was so dismayed by all of this that when they started fighting with one another. Now, jumping Jehoshaphat, who ever heard of a battle like that? That the lead part of the infantry was singers. And then comes the fortune. You see, if you look down to verse 25, the spoils of war were fantastic. There's bodies of the enemy laying everywhere when they fought each other. And there are all of the riches that they brought with them just laying on the ground. So many that the Jehoshaphat's men couldn't carry them all. Now that's a great story, isn't it? It's a story of faithful. It's a story of ones that are willing to fight for what's right and to defend themselves. They were not the aggressors. It's one of fear. They did have a godly fear, but they knew where to go with that fear. They were men of faith. Jehoshaphat had a great confidence in God, and the foretelling was that they didn't have to be afraid. They didn't have to be dismayed because the battle wasn't theirs. It was God's. And then comes the funny part of the story. The spoils of the war came from that part of the army that went ahead of all of the rest, singing praises to God. and the enemy killed each other in the confusion, and the fortune was theirs. It's a great story. It's a positive story. It's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.